Hello, everyone. I would like to have a brief discussion about the egregious and outright obscene action of our government of forcing the railroad workers who were threatening to strike to basically take it on the chin and go back to work and accept extremely cruel conditions that, of course, have been deteriorating over time. But first, before I really get into this, I'd like to show you how this entire debacle that I'm hope and am sure that you guys may be aware of the entire situation surrounding the road workers. So I'm going to show you how this has been portrayed in the mass media, which of course is, basically an arm or a branch of the US government and basically serves as a mouthpiece for them in spreading their ridiculous propaganda. Take a look at this.
A rail strike is one of the most disruptive and expensive things that can happen to an economy.
A rail shutdown or strike would disrupt supply chains.
A strike means food prices could skyrocket.
Many experts are saying would be an economic catastrophe.
That could mean a big shortage and massive price hikes. Even gas prices could increase.
And it also could cost the economy $1 billion within the first week.
That would cripple the economy.
I'm not setting aside the concerns of your members, but are you and your members willing to stop the rails, in effect, and accept those costs to the U.S. economy?
Do you believe a strike is worth it if it cripples the U.S. economy and costs up to $2 billion a day?
More than $2 billion per day.
Is it worth it?
And on top of all of that, the holidays are right around the corner.
It's a little less than a month right before Christmas here.
Especially right before the holidays.
President Biden warning if that happened, it would devastate the economy if we had a strike like that. So joining me now to talk about this and a lot more is Bank of America. It's Brian Moynihan, Chairman and CEO, one of the biggest banks in the world.
So what you just witnessed there was basically a collage or a collection of clips that basically give you a pretty good sentiment of how this was framed to the public and how they wanted you to receive this news. This is potential strike, the railroad shutdown is extremely harmful for the economy. It will cost us billions of dollars. Many people will struggle, especially with the holidays going around. And this strike just it isn't something that we need right now. We don't need this as a country. We don't need people to go through hardship just simply because their fellow workers are suffering through such very difficult times. That's how this was being framed. And it's entirely disgusting and every other negative word that you can attribute to it. But the reality of the situation is this. There is a group of workers, particularly in this situation, the railroad workers, who were basically asking for better conditions, a better quality of life. And they were asking for more or less an assortment of things. But the main thing that you'll see when you look into this is the subject of sick days and the amount of time that they were able to take off of work. Now, it's to my understanding that they were asking originally for somewhere around 14 or so. Now, the progressive, so-called politicians, progressive, that word definitely deserves air quotations. I'm not even quite sure what it means anymore, as you might be able to relate to. But they came up with a proposal to include some sort of amendment that would give them 7 days of paid sick days, basically cutting their original ask in half. And they did so kind of sort of as a front to make it seem like they cared, when in reality they didn't, because they all ended up voting in one way or another, with the exception of, I believe, one of them of the so-called squad. That is another word that deserves to be in quotations. And of course, voting to finalize the deal to force the rail workers to accept the ridiculous, as the Biden administration calls it, tentative agreement, which they rejected back in the early fall, around September or so. But of course, in order to save the economy and to avoid difficulty, they had to make these workers suffer. And as a result, they indeed are. And all this is a show of power and of force by a government that has been inflicting austerity and things like it upon its working class for such a very long time. I saw something on Twitter not too long ago about an individual saying basically that the American empire won't survive for another 100 years. And when you look at things like this that carry on in this situation, of course, as it pertains to these railroad workers and how they're being treated and what happened when they simply asked for paid sick days. Think about this. They're asking for sick days off. If I get sick, I don't want to come in because I'm sick. And the vitriol, the negativity, the angst that they were met with by their employers and by the government that their employers own is absolutely astonishing to look at. The railroad people that own and operate them, the big dogs, so to speak. These people have made an exuberant amount of money, record-breaking profits over whatever period of time, yet they can't even give their workers sick days. It's absolutely incredible. And spare me the argument that certain politicians may make, oh, the government doesn't need to get involved in helping the workers in this way. Well, that's quite an interesting argument because the government gets involved all the time to go against workers as they did in this instance right here. Imposing austerity, making it harder for them to join the union or not at all, always siding with the employer versus the employee. I mean, it's an endless cycle of a beatdown upon a collection of people, that being the working class. And one has to wonder, how much longer can these individuals, myself included, endure these suffering times before they crack? And we've seen throughout history, there are many examples that we can point to of a collection of people in a particular society that have been subjected to so much degradation and hurt, and when they finally lash out, the effects are extremely disastrous. But don't be fooled. This has nothing to do with how hard it would be for regular people if the railroads were to stop, and how, prices would go up, and how it would, instability and all of this. This isn't about any of that. This is another example of our government acting in the interest of those that own it. That's all this is. Nothing more, nothing less.